We are officially live. Hello, everybody.
Hang on,
Welcome.
hang on. No, never. Okay. Yep.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Turnover Tours podcast. I am your co-host, Sir Random Guy, along as your co-host Thomas. And today we have a special guest along with us to talk about the big game this coming Sunday, and that is Seahawks Brandon. Go ahead and introduce yourself when you're ready.
All right. Well, I am Seahawks Brendan Nelson. I've been doing this for quite some time now. Technically, I started a YouTube channel back in 2007. I've been on this channel since 2015. And as time has gone by, it's turned into a place where I make a couple videos a week to where I make 4 or 5 videos a day. And it has been a tremendous ride on this channel. It's been a lot of fun. And finally, now I get to cover a Super Bowl because I actually wasn't making videos the years that we went to the Super Bowl under Pete Carroll. So it's really nice to be here finally.
Yes, sir. Go Hawks.
All right.
Hello?
So yeah. All right.
Okay.
Should go down. All right. So, yeah, nice, nice channel. Hope you guys go find him on his YouTube link down below. You send the YouTube link. Anyways, what's up, everybody? Today we are going to talk about a couple big things. Of course, will be the Super Bowl, but before that, we are going to be talking about the 10 head coaching hirings since all of them are officially filled. So, finally, but let's talk about the first one, and this was the first hiring, at least on the spot, and that is the Giants hiring John Harbaugh. I feel like this is a good culture fit in terms of the Giants. I feel like they kind of need someone this steady movement. I know his time in Baltimore was a bit shaky towards the end, especially kind of towards the latter half the last few years or so, where he kind of tend to blow leads. But part of the, his firing in Baltimore was because he refused to fire Todd Monken during his time, supposedly. But now he's going to be the Giants head coach. And most recently, he just did hire Matt Nagy as his new offense coordinator, which I do have my gripes about. But what are your guys' thoughts on John Harbaugh being with the New York Giants? Let's start with Brandon.
Well, the Giants are a team that needs stability right now. They can't really be thinking about winning a Super Bowl right now. That's a team that has been pretty much destitute for coming up on 15 years now. And I think that John Harbaugh is going to do a great job of getting that team to like a base level of competency. It's kind of like a better version of hiring a guy like a Mike McCarthy, where you know you're going to get somebody who knows what he's doing and is going to do a generally good job. Maybe you're not going to win a Super Bowl with him, but you can't be thinking about that right now if you're the Giants because you're so far away from that. So they've struck out a lot lately. They have ended up with some of the worst head coaches in the league for like basically the last 12 years. McAdoo, Pat Shurmur, Joe Judge, and it ended up being that Brian Dable wasn't good, so you had to go for it. And I think it's good. I'm not a huge Harbaugh guy, but he's at the very least a good coach.
Yeah. It's pretty much just going to be appeal. All right, Thomas, what are your thoughts on John Harbaugh going to the New York Giants?
Should be a good hire. Hopefully that he can help that defense be better because that has been their strength the past few seasons. But underneath their defensive coordinator who got fired, this has been a weak point. Hopefully he can help Dart out with his abilities because he's kind of a younger Lamar Jackson in a sense. And hopefully with a guy like Scadaboo, who is kind of like a younger Henry, it should be some familiarity over there in New York. But kind of like what Brandon was saying, it's definitely going to take a while before they can even think about going to the Super Bowl. It all just depends if they can get it all great. You know?
Yeah. All right. Then we got the next hiring aboard. The Atlanta Falcons hiring Kevin Stefanski from the Atlanta, of course, former former coach for the Cleveland Browns. Sorry about that. But I mean, I feel like this one's a positive hiring for the most part. I know his time in Cleveland didn't end the way it expected to be, of course. I feel like maybe the relationship between Cleveland and Stefanski went stale for the most at the end there, but I think bringing at least kind of a fresh face for Atlanta, at least a proven offensive guy in Stefanski could help maybe Michael Penix Jr. to become the quarterback that the Falcons expect him to be. And I mean, I know there's been some rumors around that they might release Kirk Cousins sometime this offseason, but I feel like it's still a bit of a bonus that at least Stefanski and Cousins are going to work together once again. And keeping Jeff Ulbrich as the DC, I feel like that is a positive move, at least in my eyes. But I feel like this is the best hiring by far. Brandon, what do you have your thoughts? What are your thoughts?
I think there's a little bit of an echo on the video right now. Does anybody know where that's coming from?
Not entirely sure. It might be on my end.
Don't hear an echo on my end.
Oh, okay. All right. It's a pretty quiet one, so I'm not too worried about it, but just wanted to point that out real quick. But anyway, I'm a big Stefanski guy. I think he did a great job in Cleveland. He just wasn't able to get a good quarterback. And when he did have a good quarterback, he did pretty well. He had that incredible 2023 season where he made the playoffs with 5 different quarterbacks making at least one start. I think that he is a phenomenal offensive mind. And I think that Atlanta job was the most coveted job this cycle. I think that you're getting tremendous young talent with guys like Bijan Robinson, Drake Thomas. If you believe in Penix, which admittedly I kind of don't, but some people do. If you believe in Michael Penix, then he may end up being a good for you. And then you've also got some guys on defense like Brandon Dorlus, Xavier Watts, Troy Anderson. It's actually a really good team that is unexpectedly kind of searching for a new head coach. So I think that's great. And I think it's a great opportunity for him. I think he's going to do really well in Atlanta.
All right, Thomas, what are your thoughts on Kevin Stefanski being the next Falcons head coach?
I think it's a really good hiring. They have the pieces to get it all done with Bijan, Drake London if he stays, Kyle Pitts if he resigns, which I don't think he will. Penix again, kind of what Brent was saying, is a question mark in a sense, but it all depends if he can get it all together. I think if they do trade or cut Cousins, it'll definitely clear out some cap room. I am glad that they did get rid of their GM, who also did not do that well, especially the past couple of seasons. Having especially the big one with signing Cousins to that 4-year deal and then immediately drafting Penix in the first round, which is still stupid to this very day. But yeah, as long as he can keep his quarterbacks contained and happy and not go for the big flashiest guy, then who knows what we'll have with Stefanski over in Atlanta.
All right. Next hiring, at least if I'm kind of went based on memory on the order. Next one we have is Robert Saleh to the Tennessee Titans. Honestly, I am a Saleh guy because of course we saw him as the DC for the Niners for many years during his time. And when he has those defenses with a healthy roster, he can do some good work with it. And I feel like what definitely made the Saleh hiring, besides his leadership, I feel like what pushed in the edge to make it a very great hire is the hiring of Brian Daboll. Of course, his time in the New York Giants ended up badly, but I think if he's just probably in the OC position, this can definitely work for the development for Tennessee Titans quarterback Cam Ward. So I feel like this hiring is a very solid move. The only thing I'm probably questioning now is maybe the defensive coordinator hiring Gus Bradley, but I think if Saleh is probably the main defensive player caller, like you see with Mike McDonald with Seattle, then I think this will be not a bad hire. Brandon, what are your thoughts?
I think that's pretty good. I'm a fan of Saleh. I think he's a good coach. I think that he did about as well as he could do with New York, and things got out of hand for reasons that had very little to do with him. I don't know if it's going to work in Tennessee. That's obviously not a very good situation. It's not a very good organization, not very good ownership. So I think that they may have issues in Tennessee that go beyond the coach. But I think as far as a coaching hire goes, this was about as good as you could get.
All right, Thomas, what are your thoughts on Robert Saleh being the Titans head coach?
I like it. I think it's a really good hire, defensive guy, as we saw in San Francisco, such as last season, and then before his tenure in New York. My biggest issue right now is the Titans don't have a defense. And when it comes to their offense, it's very limited, only having Ward as like the only offensive guy that they really have. Calvin Ridley's too old. I don't trust their running back. They don't have any other receivers. Um, but with the amount of cap space they have, which they have the most or second most or whatever it is, hopefully Salah can build around Ward and rebuild that defense. But it's probably going to take some time, and I'm going to give it probably 2-3 years before you really see if Saul is the guy.
All right, all right. And then, of course, next one we have the hiring for the Miami Dolphins head coach is Jeff Hafley. Of course, he was the Packers defensive coordinator, and previously he was also the head coach at Boston College as well for his tenure. I mean, this is a hiring. I'm like, it kind of felt like it was more of a matter of when they hired the assistant Packers GM and Sullivan. For Miami, it just kind of felt like a matter of when Hafley was going to get hired. I would have preferred they would have probably hired a guy like Shula just because it fit like a glove. But I think this is not. I'm not sure how to feel about this hire. Honestly, I mean, this could work. I mean, maybe defensively for sure, but still kind of a big if right here. But it's just maybe it can work, maybe not. I'm honestly not sure really to make a full move on this hire. It just feels very not meh, but just it's just very, I guess it's something. But Brandon, what are your thoughts for Jeff Hafley?
Yeah, it's okay. I think this is going to be one of those ones where it's just really hard to know how he's going to do as a head coach. And this is something that I say a lot. An NFL head coach probably works over 100 hours a week during the season. Like the hours for an NFL head coach are insane. Like 100 hours is probably on the low end. And how much of that do we as fans get to see? We get to see 3 hours of it every week, and that's it. The rest of the stuff we don't know. So when I look at somebody like Jeff Hafley getting hired, my instinct is that's just okay. But you never know who's actually going to end up being a good head coach until you get there. Like I, to my recollection, John Harbaugh was a special teams coordinator before he got hired as the head coach in Baltimore. I don't think anybody could have had an inkling of whether or not he would have been a good head coach. He had very little. He did not have much of a resume to fall back on. Andy Reid never was an offensive coordinator in the NFL. He just went right from quarterback coach to head coach, and he's one of the greatest head coaches in NFL history. So it's really hard to tell with this kind of stuff when you don't have a lot of information and a lot of resume to work with. But from what we know, it seems okay. I'm not in love with it, but it's fine.
Yeah. All right, Thomas, Jeff Hafley.
Definitely going to be an interesting hire. When it comes to his resume, I don't know anything about him. I didn't know who he was until basically this past season. First year guy is definitely going to be a gamble and be risky, but it all depends on what he does, in my opinion, with that offense. If he's going to keep Tua around or if he's going to get him shipped off, how he's going to deal with the old Tyree situation. Yeah, I know there's an echo. I don't know how to deal with it. Just sorry. Um, Maybe he can get that defense at least somewhat good. I know they have an older Minka, but I don't know for how long. I don't know what his contract situation is going to be looking like. Outside of that, I know they have a good defensive front, but it's all going to depend on if Hafley is even head coaching material, in my opinion, or if he can be their guy.
Alrighty. Next one we got is Steelers hiring head coach Mike McCarthy, who was, of course, the former head coach for the both Dallas Cowboys and Green Bay Packers. I mean, this was I like for the Steelers is I would have I guess let me start with this. If this was the Titans, the Browns, or the Cardinals hiring Mike McCarthy, of course, I would not have been too much a fan of it, but at least it's like I would have understood. Just looking for someone with stability, just looking for someone that's like that just kind of need someone just to hold on to for maybe for a little bit. But for the Steelers, it's just like for many years now, for maybe over a decade now, it's just been like kind of they've been stuck in this complacency role where they're just like, okay, we're gonna have a winning season every year, congratulations, but what are the results in the playoffs? What just first round exits or even just getting eliminated in the divisional round like 2017? You just there's nothing really much to say about this, but yeah, I felt like they could have gone somewhere else, but this is a hire I'm just not really a fan of for if you are the Steelers. But yeah, Brandon, what are your thoughts?
I actually like it. I think that team needs to develop a quarterback, and I actually am a fan of Will Howard, who is their current backup, or he may end up being their starter this year. And McCarthy's good at developing quarterbacks. That's something that he's done well for most of his career, and that goes all the way back to when he was with the 49ers. And if you're that Steelers team, you might need to sacrifice a couple of seasons just to get a quarterback going there. And McCarthy may not be the guy who gets you over the top to another Super Bowl. In fact, I don't think he will be. But I do think that this gives them an opportunity to reset with a new young quarterback that they can win with over an extended period of time. So I like it for that reason, but I don't think he's going to bring that team back to glory.
Alrighty, Thomas, your thoughts on Mike McCarthy?
I kind of just see him as another Tomlin in a sense, to where it's just they're gonna. I feel like they're gonna go 9-8, 10-7, make the postseason, and then get bounced in the first round. I don't. There's not much of an upgrade. I hear that he wants to bring back Rodgers, which if he does, good. I guess he can. I guess Howard can learn behind Rodgers for another year. But I mean, if I'm the Steelers, I want to trot out Howard, see what you got in the guy, see what you got in the kid, and then kind of go on from there. If he's not the real deal, he's not the real deal. But if anything, they just need to blow it all up and just start from scratch. But they can never do that if they're always picking within like picks 15 through 20. So until they can kind of get that part dealt with, figure out their TV room, I don't really know how McCarthy is going to be playing out, truth be told.
Alrighty. All right. Next one we got is Buffalo Bills head coach is Joe Brady. I think with this hiring, I feel like at this point it's kind of those ones in my mind uh, is like that point. Why did you just fire Sean McDermott if you're going to promote Joe Brady to the from OC to head coach? I mean, again, and this could be like what Brandon says with Jeff Halfley because like again, we don't see what we know behind the scenes. Of course, we just see it from every day, every week, once a week for 3 hours a day to see how they perform. But it's just those ones is like I really think if they were gonna fire Sean McDermott, they probably could have gone somewhere maybe in the outside route. But again, maybe Joe Brady could be the guy who could push him through the edge, or maybe he's not. But it's still I'm pretty I'll say indifferent about this hire with Joe Brady or getting promoted. All right, Brandon, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know how this really makes you better. Maybe this was the only way they could keep Joe Brady. Maybe Joe Brady would have left for Vegas or something if the Bills didn't keep him. If that's the case, then I understand. But the goal has to be for Buffalo to fix that defense. That defense was a mess this last year, and McDermott, while I'm fine with him getting fired, he did a lot of work to keep that defense afloat for the last several years. And this year, things finally broke. But McDermott did great work with that defense. And to me, while I do understand that the priority is to build around Josh Allen, you really need to get someone in there that's going to be able to restore some life to that defense. And they're going to probably have to do it without great players because that Bills cupboard is very bare of talent, in my opinion. They've got some decent guys like Cole Bishop, but a lot of their other guys get hurt a lot. And they lean on these old aging veterans, guys like Tre'Davious White and Joey Bosa. So I kind of would have gone a different direction there. I understand they didn't want to lose Joe Brady. Maybe they were afraid of losing him, like I said. But unless it's that, I'm not really seeing how this one makes the team better.
All right,
Oh, he's back.
Thomas.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
It's definitely a very confusing hire in a sense to where when McDermott got fired, it was a little surprising, though. I feel like he wasn't the coach to get him over the hump to that Super Bowl. They've always fallen short. Year after year after year. But after the whole like ownership thing and then promoting their GM, the whole Keon Coleman situation, like hiring from within probably wasn't the best move because you're gonna want a guy that wants his own team, wants the way he wants to run it, and they're just kind of just going to probably be like reverting back to what they already have. Another thing is that what was I going to say about this whole thing? Kind of like what Brandon's going to say on the defense. It's where I don't mind the hire. It's just that they got to get their defense figured out. Now that they have been exposed, and the defense fell apart. They need to go younger. They need to stop getting guys like Miller on these big contracts. And that's the guy they said Joey Bosa. Let Tre'Davious, not Tre'Davious Ward. What's his name? Their corner.
Tre'Davious White.
Excuse me, Tre'Davious White. Yeah, they need to kind of like him walk, doing his own thing, and then just try to build around Allen. They don't got much left of him before he starts to be on that decline. He's still in his prime, but if they want to get over this hump, they just need to just figure their own shit out before, I guess, thinking about Super Bowl at this point. That makes sense.
Alrighty. All right, not bad. All right, next one we got is now head coach for the Baltimore Ravens and Jesse Minter. Of course, his last tenure or his last job was with was being the Chargers defense coordinator. I think I remember he was also the defense coordinator for Michigan when they made that run to win the championship back in 2024. I mean, I feel like, and to be fair, he was with the Baltimore Ravens even beforehand. So this is also a bit. This hire just feels like a bit of familiarity, but also a bit new at the same time. I think the Ravens defense was a big issue back last year, and I feel like Jesse Minter being the hire, this is what they need. It kind of reminds me similar with, I guess, kind of with Mike McDonald, who was, a Ravens guy before he moved to Seattle, and I think this is kind of like someone they needed to start off like kind of fresh young blood in a sense. And now you just hopefully they bring the right offensive pieces to help Lamar out too, and hopefully get the Ravens back into title contention within the next year or so. Brandon, your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great hire, and you felt it coming the whole way. It made a lot of sense that the Ravens were going to hire Minter. It made a lot of sense that Minter was their guy. They definitely want somebody to fix that defense because their defense has been defense really fell off a cliff last year. Definitely been a loss of some talent there. And Minter has a really good resume from his time with the Chargers, turning that defense around pretty quickly. It just felt like a Ravens type hire. It felt like something they would do. That makes a lot of sense to me.
All right, Thomas, when you're ready.
I think it's a really good hire. It's definitely going to help revamp that defense that has not been the same ever since McDonald left in 24. I kind of see him as like their McDonald replacement in a sense. And with with the defensive weapons that they have, they should be really damn good. And kind of like what Brandon's saying, if they can build around Lamar, it's going to be a scary good team. Just curious on how well they can put it all together.
All right. All right. Nice, nice. Next one we got is Todd Monken, who this was kind of a we were kind of for the Cleveland Browns. Of course, he was the Ravens OC back in the last few years, since 2023, if I recall. Uh, and I know he was also in Georgia beforehand as well. I mean, this hiring just it just feels like this is the um like this was a hiring that they were like trying to be like, okay, we're kind of going down the list because since Jesse Minter rejected his interview, Chad Udinski decided to go back to Jacksonville to become their OC. And then I think Mike McDaniel also rejected the interview too to become the Chargers offensive coordinator. It just seemed like this was like we're going down the list, and also they were also needed to fill out the Rooney Rule interview with bringing in Anthony Lynn as a head coach interview as well. I mean, I, I mean, I'm not sure how to fully feel about Todd Monken as a head coach in general. I mean, could he bring this offense to greater heights? Could he work with the quarterbacks he currently has, or is he going to bring in a different quarterback entirely? Who knows? It seems so far he might just start Shedeur Sanders going into 2026 because if you guys remember, the Ravens did actually want to draft Shedeur Sanders the previous year, but of course, Shedeur Sanders said no, he didn't want to be a Raven. But I mean, this could work out. Who knows? But Brandon, your thoughts with Todd Monken being the next Browns head coach?
It's kind of a weird time for him to get this job, right? I mean, a couple years ago, he was coming off the national championships with Georgia, and then he had the number one offense in the league in Baltimore. But the last couple years, it hasn't been nearly as good. So it's kind of weird that he's getting this opportunity now. And it really does feel like Cleveland can't get anybody good because their situation is so bad. So they're just kind of running out the clock until they can get rid of the Deshaun Watson contract. And there's something to be said for that. Like the 49ers once upon a time hired Jim Tom Sula to be a head coach for a year, and they knew he wasn't going to be good. They knew they were going to fire him pretty quickly, but they just needed somebody to run out the clock. So I get it, but it's not something I think is necessarily going to work. I don't think it's really intended to work, honestly.
All right, Thomas, thoughts on Todd Monken?
Definitely a kind of a desperate hire. The amount of people that were going to interview with Cleveland just after like the first interview just said no. I mean, I don't blame them. That team entirely is just a complete mess with the whole Deshaun contract and then the whole Shadur thing. And they also got Dylan Gabriel there, which they didn't even know what the hell they're going to do with him. Um, but kind of like what Brendan was saying, this is probably just going to be maybe like a 1 maybe 2 year thing while they kind of just figure out what they're going to be doing with their future, whether it will be um, with this guy or they're going to just look in a different direction. But it just feels like this was like the only person to pick up the phone and actually like sign that contract. Which again, I can understand why coaches don't want to do this. It's just a complete mess of an organization, and it does not move the needle for me in the slightest.
All right, there you go. Sorry. So I think for the most part, it's like the only thing also is like what gets me is like too is like Jim Schwartz also wanted the head coaching position for Cleveland, and it was like it felt like that was going to be the match there. It seemed like he wanted to be the Cleveland head coach. I mean, his defenses were very rock solid despite what the record may show in Cleveland. And then it's just like okay, we're gonna hire Todd Monken just in the hopes of the fact that we keep Jim Schwartz as the DC for Cleveland, which I don't, and that pretty much just displeased Jim Schwartz in that situation. So now Jen Schwartz is likely going to be gone. Maybe he's going to go somewhere else now. But hey, on to the next head coach. We got, of course, Seattle Seahawks offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak. Even though no deal has not been officially signed until after the Super Bowl, but it seems like it's pretty set on that Clint Kubiak will be the next Raiders head coach. I mean, he's been an OC for a few years now. I know he's only been Seattle's OC for 1 year, but of course he was the OC for the Vikings for a little bit, and of course he was the offensive coordinator for the Saints. I feel like he's definitely is a good offensive minded coach. But I do see during the plays during the season in Seattle that maybe he has some moments where he tends to be a little bit conservative when doesn't need to, but then there's moments like I feel like I'm not sure if he's just trying to hold back on, but I feel like he definitely could be a great hire for the Raiders, but this is definitely gonna have a lot of work to go on, especially with the O line, especially with now potentially their quarterback could be Fernando Mendoza if they want to go in that route, unless they're willing to keep Geno Smith for another year. Who knows? Maybe they want to rebuild the interior line instead. But Clint Kubiak, when he signs that deal, he's going to have a lot of work to go with for this upcoming season. Brandon, your thoughts with Clint Kubiak?
Um, it would not shock me if Clint ends up being one of those guys that's a really good coordinator, but he doesn't quite have what it takes to be a head coach. And there are a lot of guys like that. A lot of guys like that. Steve Spagnuolo is like that, right? He tried to become a head coach once and it was a disaster. There are guys like Marty Mortonweg that are just not meant to be head coaches in this league, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it would not shock me if in a few years we learn that Kubiak just doesn't quite have the, I don't know, it's almost something abstract. It's not something statistical, because I think statistically, obviously, Kubiak did a great job this year. But my other hang up here, and I think that Kubiak could be good. I don't really think Mendoza is a very good fit for his offense. Kubiak is running the Shanahan scheme, and I look at Mendoza and I see an RPO quarterback. I don't know if that's going to work that well. I don't know how well Mendoza knows how to play under center. I don't know how well he knows how to utilize the footwork you need when you're running play action from under center. So there's going to be a significant learning curve to Mendoza learning that Kubiak offense, but it seems like the Raiders are already going to take him. So I have reservations, but I give him a chance for sure.
All right, Thomas, thoughts on Clint Kubiak on potentially being with the Raiders head coach within the next week?
I dislike the hire only because I wanted to stay in Seattle for another year. But it was always going to be Raiders or bust at the kind of end of the day. He didn't want to go to Arizona, which was the last coaching spot available. He said, much as I stay a year in Seattle. The whole Las Vegas Seahawks narrative is just not going to go away at this point if Vegas continues to get former Seahawks with their coaches or players at this point. But I, outside of that, I do like the hire a lot. I think that he's a great fit for that offense and for that scheme. It all depends if they keep Geno Smith or not. But he's gonna have a great running back to work with Genty. He's gonna have to probably get an offensive another wide receiver or two. I know they got Tucker, but who knows for how long. Lockett is probably will not resign. Depends if he even retires at the end of the year. They have a great tight end in Brock Bowers. Decently good defense led by Max Crosby, but it all depends on what they do at one. If they can build that interior O line for Genty to run through and be that dominant force that he was supposed to be coming out of college, coming in at pick six from Pete Carroll and himself. But it depends if Mendoza can play well with that scheme. Because only certain quarterbacks can play underneath that scheme, and Darnold is one of them. But I don't see Mendoza as a Sam Darnold. I think they're both very different, but it all depends if he can get his other offensive weapons to work well with that. With him kind of being more of like a run-heavy guy, like Genty is going to be getting a lot more carries, being a lot more productive throughout the game. Hopefully, he'll use Brock Bowers a lot more. We saw him using AJ Barner and Elijah Arroyo a lot throughout the season. But again, it all just depends on what they do at quarterback and if they can build up that offensive line.
Alrighty. Then we have the final hiring in the head coaching cycle, and that is Mike LaFleur. Mike LaFleur, of course, was currently the OC for the LA Rams, and he was the previous OC for the New York Jets during the Robert Saleh era in the first 2 years. I mean, this hiring, I'm going back to again what we talked about Jeff Halfley earlier. It's just a hiring that I'm like, I have no like no feelings about. It's just like I'm just indifferent on this hiring as well. I mean, it just feels like this was the hiring that like, hey, we wanted Clint Kubiak very badly. We try to do as best we can to convince Kubiak to go to Arizona instead to Las Vegas or stay in Seattle. But I just never like I just don't really know. Maybe I know the Arizona offense needs something to work with. I'm not sure they're going to keep Kyler Murray for next season. Maybe they want to go with a different route. This is just a hiring maybe that could it's just we don't know what we're going to see. This could work, maybe not.
I'm actually a fan of LaFleur. I think this makes sense. He's called plays before in the NFL, and he's learned from McVay for the last couple of years. He is, along with Shieldhouse, kind of the next hot McVay assistant. Could be the next Kevin O'Connell. He's called a couple plays for the Rams in meaningless games for the Rams in recent years. He called the game against Seattle last year in Week 18, and he called the Week 18 game the year before that as well. And I actually like this one. He comes from good football stock. His brother's obviously the head coach in Green Bay. The question is he going to get the opportunity to really do something in Arizona of value? Because Jonathan Gannon did not. Jonathan Gannon was there 3 years. He never got to pick his quarterback. He just had to make it work with Kyler Murray for 3 years. Couldn't make it work, got fired. So if you're LaFleur, hopefully you've gotten some guarantees that you're going to get a chance to implement what you want to implement.
All right, Thomas, go ahead.
I think it's a tremendous hire for Arizona. When it comes to that offense, that's always kind of been the weakest point of that team. But with the Rams having the number one offense last season, uh, I can see Arizona going up from where they're at right now. It all depends what they do with quarterback. If they keep Murray for another year, or if they just keep Brissett for like a bridge, and they just try to get a guy in the 2027 draft, or if they really want to reach on Ty Simpson, but I don't see that actually happening. But I can probably expect a breakout year for Harrison coming up. They have a good wide receiver too in Wilson, great tight end and Trey McBride, and defensive Connor. Can't sleep with that guy after his injury. But offense side of the ball, great hiring. Defense still kind of up in the air with what they're going to do, but still kind of sad that he's still within the division. Kind of hoping he would go elsewhere, but cannot complain. Hopefully the Rams offense will take a dive.
Alrighty, and those are the all 10 head coaching hirings that exist that will be there. Now we are going to get talk about the main important part, and that is the Super Bowl. So, of course, we have the last few weeks, the playoffs. It's been a crazy time in these playoffs. You know, almost every game that you watch have been in some way entertaining. They have in some way of value. You probably could have gone some games either way. Like, of course, with the Panthers almost upsetting the Rams in the wild card, the blown 25 or the Bears putting 25 unanswered points in the fourth quarter, game the win in the first time in 15 years. And in terms of the playoffs, you have, of course, the Steelers getting booed in the wild card by the Texans defense, the Jaguars coming up short against the Bills, and then of course you have the Chargers just kind of pulling up a stinker against the Patriots in the wildcard round, and of course the Eagles losing to the Niners, and then eventually the NFC divisional round, the Seahawks putting up a dominant performance, 41-6 against the San Francisco 49ers. Great performance. The game was pretty much over from the start with Rashid Shaheed, then that kick return touchdown. The Bears and Rams game going at it toe to toe. Another game could have gone either way. The Bills and Broncos game, a game that could have been on the Bills' way. Of course, there were some calls that were very questionable, but the result that mattered. Unfortunately, Bo Nix went down at the very end of the second to last play of the game. Then, of course, the Texans defense did everything they can to win the game, but the Texans offense with C.J. Stroud throwing those 4 turnovers ended their season there, going 0-7 in divisional playoff games in Texans history. Now, the final 2 games, of course, we got the Broncos and the Patriots game. That game was very ugly. I mean, both defenses did put up a really good performance. I mean, the Broncos definitely had their opportunity to win that game, but failed. And then, of course, we have the Seahawks Rams game, which that was in fireworks, particularly. But now we are going to talk about the 2 teams that got there into the playoffs. But Thomas, I know you had something to say about the Seahawks journey, so I'm gonna give you the mic and you can begin.
Thank you. And I'll kind of make this short and a little sweet. I mean, kind of going back to 2022, trading away Russ for Locke and the draft picks and fans and Harris, whatever. Definitely a surprising move, and then releasing Wagner, and then having that tremendous 2022 season underneath Geno Smith and Pete Carroll, to just kind of just falling, kind of just repeating the same cycle in 23 without much. Only things that really happened was that draft class drafting Witherspoon and JSN, both still A+ drafts in my opinion, to going into 2024, firing Carroll and then hiring McDonald damn near 2 years ago to the exact day. It was definitely going to be a interesting 2024 year, seeing what McDonald had, but going 10-7, revamping that defense up from where it was, to walking into the 2025 offseason, trading away Geno Smith to the Raiders for a 3rd round pick, which is still a steal in my opinion. And then trading away DK Metcalf to the Steelers, which was, as much as I did not move back then, I think it was a really good move right now, because we did end up getting Nick Amawari with that pick. We're losing Lockett, unfortunately, which was, I think, the saddest part of it all, knowing that he was a year short of reaching Super Bowl in both times, really. He just drafted the year after and got released the year before. Really unfortunate. And then signing Sam Darnold that 3-year deal, kind of not knowing if he was going to be that guy after his tremendous season in Minnesota. But then, yeah, you kind of had that week 1 loss against the Niners. Like, okay, it's a divisional game. Niners, it's always been back and forth. To just watching the team and the defense just explode and be the team that we see going into the Super Bowl, with our only losses being the Niners week 1, that Bucks game week 5, and the Rams game week 11. A combined total of 9 points that basically determined the Seahawks would have gone 7-0, which I don't think they would have, but definitely going 14-3, getting the 1 seed, all underneath just a brand new regime, and then now being Super Bowls. Second year under McDonald, first year with Sam Darnold, brand new offensive weapons, revamped defense, just quick rebuild. We did not spend too much time down in the dumps. We weren't even down in the dumps to begin with, but in my opinion, let's go win this whole damn thing. We're right there. It's just been a journey the past couple years.
Okay, sorry, keep doing that. But Brandon, if you want to give your thoughts on your point of view on the Seahawks journey through from what you saw from then all the way to the Super Bowl, you go ahead.
I mean, I think the ultimate takeaway is that we're getting exactly what we signed up for. When I think about this season, I think about the fact that we got there by going through Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay. And when you fired Pete Carroll, a big reason why was because you couldn't beat those guys. You always struggled against McVay. At first, things went pretty well against Shanahan, but as time went on, your defense under Pete Carroll really stopped being able to do anything effectively against either of those offenses. And that motivated you to fire the most successful coach in franchise history. And that's not a thing you do easily, but the problem had gotten so bad, you couldn't get things done within the division that there was, you just kind of had to make a change. And that is something that was not easily undertaken, and you better get that right on the other side of it. So when you get McDonald in here, you're looking at his defense, you're looking at what he can do, and you're thinking, okay, is this the guy who's going to be able to get me past Shanahan and McVay? And for us to have to beat those two teams twice at the end of the year, beat the Niners to win the division, beat them in the divisional round, beat the Rams week 16 to take control of the division, beat the Rams again to go to the Super Bowl. And look, I'm not going to pretend like we shut down the McVay offense, because we didn't. But to get past that team some way, somehow, and of course with the Niners, we completely shut down their offense. It shows that we're getting exactly what we signed up for, because we 100% brought McDonald in here in part so he could do something that Pete Carroll could not figure out against those offenses. And it's so rare in this world where you get something that's exactly what you expected. And that's exactly what's happened here. And that's kind of the main takeaway for me.
All right. All right. So I feel like it's a great analysis, great take on the Seahawks journey. Yes, let me go with my perspective on the entire thing. So again, I guess it is just starting to go back. I would even go back a little bit further with 2020, with with a very big trade Seattle made with Jamal Adams. And at first it was like everyone. I feel like at the time, it felt like it was a pretty big risk. It felt like this was like a very big move for Seattle to make, give or take the haul that we gave up for Jamal Adams. But to me, in my perspective at the time, I was like, oh my God, this is Seattle's year. It felt like, okay, we brought in Quandre Diggs during the trade deadline, which I felt like that was a move that it was a great move for Seattle, and I'm glad that that was still a great move still. And of course, we had Shaquille Griffin as the cornerback one. It felt like, in some sense, Seattle wanted to make their own rebranded version of the Legion of Boom with Pete Carroll the last few years since they released Sherman, since Chancellor retired, and of course the whole thing with Earl Thomas back in 2018. And then of course 2020, that season it fell short. Of course, losing a very ugly in a division in a wild card game versus the LA Rams, which a team that we beat a couple weeks prior and kind of in a convincing way, that was just I felt like that was probably one of the worst losses I ever seen in a playoff game, at least just based since I started watching Seahawks football. But it was just one of those games I'm just like, okay. And then of course 2021, that was a pretty, I would say, bad offseason in as itself. Of course, with the draft, instead of going for Creed Humphrey, we decided to go with D. Eskridge, even though we still had Prime Lockett and we had DK Metcalf on the rise. But now 2022, we traded for Russell Wilson. Yes, big, again, another high risk, high reward, and guess what? It worked on us with bringing Charles Cross. We also drafted Devin Witherspoon with that other first round pick behind it too. They drafted JSN, who eventually is now pretty much one of the best wide receivers we have seen in a very long time, and potentially might win Offensive Player of the Year with it too. And eventually, I think just things started slowing up. Now with Pete Carroll getting fired, when that 2023 season before he got fired, I was thinking, okay, this is going to be Pete Carroll's job until he retires. It felt like the way it was leading towards to. When he got fired, I was very much shocked. I did not know that it was even going to happen, but they did it, and I'm like, oh my god, this is gonna happen. So my thoughts, I was like, okay, there's two head coaches that I wanted to bring in, and it was ironically the two head coaches that are in the Super Bowl, Mike Vrabel and Mike McDonald. We got McDonald, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, sure. I'm like, I'm not sure what to expect from McDonald. All I know is like, hey, he brought in the number one defense in Baltimore. It's just now it's like, hey, can he live up to the hype expected? Of course, 2024 was a rough start. Like, granted, it was. Even though we started out 3-0, but you still definitely see the flaws in that team for Seattle. But eventually, the defense got better. The offense still definitely needed work, and of course, we brought in, we fired, and this is one thing I was so shocked about that we did fire Ryan Grubb. In that year, I was like, I know he wasn't great, but it was still like, you know how like kind of like some coaches are like, hey, we're gonna bring in we're still gonna keep the guy that we have, but Mike McDonald fired him from the spot. Not only that, even during the trade deadline, we brought in Ernest Jones to help out that defense, which great impact for it, and I'm glad we extended him. Great leadership role on the linebacking core, and then that defense. And then now, of course, 2025, we drafted Gray Zabel, brought in Nick Mwari in the draft too. And I think so far in this Seattle journey in this 2024 season, 25 season, it started off, of course, with a loss with the Niners, but eventually things built up. Things changed. Things started to get moving with Sam Darnold, JSN being the number one wide receiver in terms of receiving yards. Kenneth Walker been solid. He's been more healthy than the last couple seasons we have. You have the defense been great with players like Big Cat Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, DeMarcus Lawrence brought in free agency, Uchenna Nwosu, who was injured the last couple of years but finally got healthy and has been a solid passer. Of course, we have our guys like Boye Mafe and Derek Hall, Nick Mwari, Julian Love we brought in 2023, and of course, you have Devin Witherspoon, like I mentioned earlier, and then Tariq Woolen. Even though, yes, during that NFC Championship game, he had that of course, he had that taunting penalty, but I mean, for the most part, he's been solid this past season, despite a couple incidents prior. But I mean, this Seattle team definitely has changed over the course of the last 4 seasons, and this is a team that could definitely do it. Now, let's bring in the team that is going to face Seattle in the Super Bowl, and that is the New England Patriots. New England Patriots, I guess I have to start with them. I would start with their 2020, after the 2023 season. They fired Bill Belichick. I mean, his time in New England just kind of it started to get stale. It felt like, again, kind of similar to Pete Carroll, just kind of felt like, hey, we got to change course. This is it. And they hired Gerard Mayo in 24, feeling like he could be the heir apparent since he was the linebackers coach for the Patriots the last 5 seasons. I think he got hired in 2018. I know he was a Patriots linebacker beforehand, but of course that failed very bad. But of course they still had maybe some promise with Drake May as their quarterback, and of course 2025 happened. They fired Gerard Mayo for Mike Vrabel, which I feel like it was a pretty solid hire for them. And now it was when the Patriots season started. Of course, nobody knew what to expect of them. I think some people had them as a dark horse playoff contender. I had them maybe as a 7 to 8 win team, but a team that was going to probably build up eventually. But something not like this. I mean, granted, a lot of people are going to be pointing out, well, to look at the schedule. They defeated this team. They beat this team. Not great teams, but they were still like, hey, I still believe, hey, they still won those games nonetheless. They still were able to beat those opponents, despite no matter what the schedule says, but they were still able to beat them. They still were able to get a 14-3 record, and I give credit's due for Mike Vrabel. And of course, you have the playoffs where people were questioning on that one too. It's like, oh, they defeat a Chargers team with a bad Chargers O-lineman. Of course, they were going to dominate that game. And then, of course, there was the Texans game where, well, they won because the Texans offense which is not great. Which, yes, that's true, but they were still able to do it. They were still able to shut down CJ Stroud the offense and still able to put up points even with that dominant Texas defense. And of course, there's the NFC Championship game, which that game was very ugly, granted, but again, both teams did a great job. The defense did show up, but now they're going to go against the Patriots are going to go against another great defense in Seattle. It's now probably one of the biggest tests for Drake May. Now, but yeah, here we are. But we're going to start with Brandon. What are your thoughts on the Patriots' journey to the Super Bowl?
They're definitely not battle tested the way that a team like the Seahawks are. They got to play in a much easier division. And I do think there are some issues with that team that the teams they played have not been able to exploit. None of that changes the fact that they're here, and none of that changes the fact that they could play a very good game for 3 hours on Sunday and win a game. But I do look at that Patriots team, and I do find myself thinking that's a shaky left side of the offensive line. I don't think they have great receivers. I think that their pass rush from the edge is a little bit questionable. And you ask yourself, how are they here? And they're here because they are well coached. They don't blow games that they have in their control. And they took advantage of all the opportunities that the leagues gave them. But I think it's impossible to talk about this Patriots team without talking about the road they've taken to get here. They got to play a backup quarterback in the AFC Championship game. It's hard to get around that fact, but they play football the right way, and they're not going to beat themselves. I don't think they're not that kind of team. When they're healthy, they do have a very good defense, and they have a great downfield passing attack as well.
Alrighty, Thomas, what are your thoughts on the Patriots' journey to get here to Super Bowl 60?
Definitely kind of a easier path than Seattle. I mean, there's a giant difference between going against Jarrett Stidham and then going against Matthew Stafford. Like, probably MVP Matthew Stafford. But it's just kind of due to the fact that they played against 3 tough defenses. And Seattle played against 2 great offenses, and one of them they completely shut down and dominated. The other one, it was definitely a back and forth, like full on fist fight for the Super Bowl win. But I mean, if you're just be going into um, LA and then just exploiting that terrible offensive line, yeah, most likely you're going to win games with that defense. If you're be going into Houston, yeah, obviously you're going to be having CJ turn the ball over 4 times, and that's going to be the reason why you win that game. And it's like, okay, so then, afterwards they go against Jarrett Stidham, a backup quarterback, to where if I feel like if the Broncos had Bo Nix, Broncos would have won that game, and we would be seeing a Super Bowl 48 rematch instead of a Super Bowl 49 rematch. But it also kind of just goes to show to where even look at the schedule, they lost to the Raiders week 1, and I still don't understand how they lost that game with Gino playing terribly, Carroll not coaching that great game, managed to lose. But then you look at their other losses. They lost to the Bills and in that late week game, to where they just completely choked it all. Or is it? Hang on, wait, no, is it the other way around? They lost the. Wait, hang on. Was it the first game or the second game? They lost to the Bills.
They lost the second game.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
With Buffalo.
Yeah. So it was that second game to where the Bills were out and ahead, and then they showed that lead, and if they just came roaring back in that second half to beat them. But they lost to the Bills week 1, which everyone kind of assumed, and that everyone kind of figured that would be the Bills division to lose up until they didn't. And their other loss was to who was their that Steelers loss, which I don't understand how they did that one. I mean,
that one was the Patriots' mistakes.
I mean, but didn't the Steelers fumble the ball every other drive?
Yeah, but then followed by the Patriots just like also just messing up as well. It was a more of matter of like who was going to shoot their foot less, and that game was just The Steelers just won that game 21-14. The Patriots did have opportunities to win that game. They did. They just couldn't come up with it. But I mean, now of course, if you say they faced again like today, then I think definitely the Patriots would put that game more to rest if they met up today than we saw back in September. I think it was week 3 when they faced up.
Yeah, exactly. And losing to Vegas, Buffalo, and Pittsburgh, like you can obviously see Buffalo and figure they would split. That Raiders game, we kind of figured, especially after that week 1 game, the Raiders would be a dark horse wild card team. The Patriots would probably just be like a middle of the road path. Said it was the complete exact opposite. One team already has the 1 seed locked or the number 1 overall pick locked up. The other team is looking for the Super Bowl victory. But I mean, you look at teams they won. They swept the Jets. They swept the Dolphins. Uh, they played what was it? The what? No, they played the North, swept them. I mean, they beat. When they played Baltimore, they played a backup quarterback because Lamar was injured. And then who do they play coming out of the NFC?
NFC games were this year the NFC North and wait, we're talking about the Patriots, right?
Yeah,
Sorry, not the NFC North, the NFC South this year. It was the NFC South, and I think they played one NFC East team if I remember. That would have been the Giants. It was the Giants.
again, that's just another like 5 easier opponents. I get it. We've got to figure that the Bucks would be probably the hardest challenge when it comes to that. But they beat the Bucks, beat the Panthers, Falcons, Saints, which we all kind of assumed. They beat the Giants, which we all kind of assumed. But it just goes to show you, like, you look at all their opponents, look at the road they took. That's not a team that you figured would be in the Super Bowl. We all figured that they would get exposed in either the first or the second week of the playoffs. Instead, they just played terrible offenses, great defenses, but it's hard to lose to a team that can only play one side of the ball consistently well when you can play both sides of the ball consistently well.
Alrighty, so with that in mind, with our Super Bowl preview pretty much, we are now going to do our Super Bowl pick'ems because that's what we do at the end of every show. We usually do our NFL pick'ems, and we are going to start. So we have the Seahawks and the Patriots, Super Bowl 60. Story is, of course, like we mentioned earlier, the journey for both teams, but of course the main one is the rematch of Super Bowl 49. And we all know how that ended up. But with that being said, with the things we have talked about during this portion of the episode, I am still believing that the Seattle Seahawks are going to beat the New England Patriots. I know people are going to say this is biased, but I do really think of it. Their defense has shown they could take care of business. Yes, the only game I would say that they probably gave up more than like 25 points were those Rams games, and I think the Bucks game when we didn't have Devin Witherspoon, Tariq Woolen, and it was basically a backup secondary. But yeah, I mean, even then, Seattle still kept it up the game for the most part. But I am still believing that Seattle Seahawks will beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. I think I'll say 30 to 27. I feel like it's going to be still a close game either way. Thomas, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, next. I'm also going to be taking Seattle in the Super Bowl, though I don't think it's going to be that close. I think it's going to be like a 30-14 type game. I just hope it does not come down to a second and goal off the one with 20 seconds left to go on the clock, because we all know that outcome. Even though McDonald's fed up over those questions, Darnold says that he might throw the ball depending on the situation. Swear to God, if we do and lose another pick, I might not want to fall ever again. But I mean, if we can just pull away from the game early on and just do not let Drake May or whoever was near the ball, whether it's Stevenson or Henderson, excuse me. All just depends on if we can shut that on the offense very well, and if Darnold can not see goes against that Patriots defense, even though he has been seeing them all playoff games, but knock on wood for that one. But yeah, I'm looking at a 30-14 victory and get a revenge for 11 years ago.
All right. Now, Brandon, you want to go ahead and make your Seahawks versus Patriots Super Bowl 60 prediction?
Sure. I'm feeling pretty good. I think there are some things we can exploit here. I don't think their offensive line is going to be able to hold up against our front. I think we can go with their secondary a little bit. Not a lot. They got some good guys back there, but I think we can go with that secondary a little bit. So I'm going to go 30-20. I think we're going to win 30-20. It wouldn't shock me if things get a little bit more lopsided than that. And the reason why I say that is because I do think that on some level, the Patriots haven't been tested the way we are going to be able to test them. But I don't think we can completely sleep on some things going on in this game like that. That front for the Patriots is legitimate, especially their interior, and that's a matchup that I am thinking about as we go towards this game.
Alrighty. And with that being said, this is how we conclude the episode. I wish everyone good luck this weekend. Good luck in the big game. I hope you all have a great time or a heart attack time. So, but everybody, wish y'all have a good day. Y'all have a great weekend. Y'all have a great week. Stay safe out there, and good luck.